The stars were quiet. The Galactic Council had gathered again, not for war or peace, but for laughter. Earth had sent another message, another warning. They called it a final reminder for peace. But to the Council, it was nothing more than a joke. They still believe they matter, said High Lord Rachin, his voice full of amusement. Earth is barely 200 years into space travel. Let them bark. Others laughed. Even the peaceful races stayed silent. No one wanted to defend a planet that had once begged for a seat at the table. Earth was strange, emotional, and too unpredictable. When they joined the galaxy, they spoke of peace, cooperation, and shared power. The Council gave them none of that. Earth was told to observe and learn, but Earth did not forget. The message was short. We seek no conflict, but do not test our limits. This is Earth's final warning. The Council laughed again. Some even called it charming. Humans love drama, one delegate joked, so the Council took action not through battle, but through pride. A trade blockade was issued. No goods to or from Earth. No contact, no support. Earth would learn its place. That night, something strange happened. A communication relay near the Outer Rim Sector 7G went dark. At first, they blamed a solar flare. Then, a second station disappeared. Then a third. The Council sent patrol ships to investigate. They didn't return. Still, no one panicked. Pirates, said one. A technical issue, said another. A coincidence, said the last. But deep in the shadows of space, something was watching. Inside a quiet monitoring station on VRL4, a young technician named Ellen froze. Her screen flickered with static, then cleared. A ship appeared. It didn't match any Council records. It had no markings, no signal, no crew data. Just a smooth black surface, long and curved like a forgotten blade. It wasn't just drifting. It was moving with purpose. Ellen called her supervisor. By the time he arrived, the screen had gone dark. Elsewhere, a security officer on a deep-range probe vessel received a strange signal, a repeating tone, in an old Earth frequency. The signal was encrypted, but the AI translated the message into one word: watching. Now the Council grew silent. They sent high-priority scouts with stealth cloaks to scan the vanished sectors. One of them sent back a visual before the connection failed. It was just one frame, one image on old Earth battlecruiser design. But it was different, larger, sharper, alive. The file was analyzed. The signature matched a project Earth had cancelled decades ago. A ghost fleet. Ships that never officially existed. They were said to be controlled by something else, something not human. The Council held another meeting, this time behind closed doors. They reviewed Earth's history, its wars, its past warnings. A pattern formed. Earth never struck first. But when pushed too far, it changed. They had seen what happened to Mars when Earth was betrayed. They remembered the silence after the moon uprising. Earth's strength wasn't in its ships, it was in its silence. And what came after? One young Council member and intern, barely of age, stood up trembling. We've made a mistake, he whispered. We thought they were weak. We thought their warning was a bluff. Then what do you suggest? Asked High Lord Rachin, now less amused. Don't send more ships, the intern said. Don't laugh. Don't test them. But it was already too late. At the edge of the galaxy, on an uninhabited moon, a black ship opened its eyes. Not windows. Eyes watching everything. It didn't fire. It didn't speak. It only moved. Toward the next system. A low signal echoed across the Council's own communication lines, deep, cold, and ancient. Judgment begins. The galaxy had mocked Earth's warning. Now, something old was waking up, and it remembered everything. Asterisk, the silence had become louder than war. Across the galaxy, entire sectors had gone quiet. Communication beacons showed nothing but static. Trade ships vanished mid-route. Outer colonies sent emergency signals once, then never again. And still Earth said nothing. The Galactic Council sat in their chambers, trying to stay calm. But fear had started to grow, slow and steady like a cold wind through metal halls. The Council blamed solar storms, pirates, system failures, but everyone in the room knew the truth was darker. They just didn't want to speak it. Name began to return in whispers. For years, the Council had dismissed humanity. Too emotional, too unstable, a species better seen, not heard. But now, as entire fleets disappeared, that same species had become a shadow none of them could understand. A scientist named Vornar, once part of the Earth Research Division, requested an emergency audience. He was old and forgotten, but the Council had no better answers. They let him speak. I warned you long ago, he said, placing an old data crystal on the table. Earth was building something beyond our reach, not weapons, not fleets, something worse, something patient. The Council watched as the crystal displayed forgotten files. Years ago, Earth had launched hundreds of deep space vessels, unmanned. Each ship had a Cora living AI, quiet, learning, observing. Earth had called them the Watchers. They were never meant to attack. They were guardians. Only one code would activate them. The galaxy has judged us unworthy. It's a myth, said a Council member. Then explain the vanishings, Vornar replied. Explain the signals. The repeating tones match Earth's old military frequency. But Earth's own people aren't sending them. That same moment, across 5 systems, unknown signals pulsed again, one tone per lost planet, and in each one, the signal ended with the same word, translated into every language the galaxy knew. Observed, the council panicked. Emergency fleets were scrambled, scout ships were sent with cloaking, but only one came back with footage. A ship, black and still, hovered above a dead spaceport. It looked like a shadow shaped into metal. No lights. Weapons, no crew. But the spaceport below had no sign of life. Not destroyed, just empty. On the ship's side, a message glowed briefly in Earth Standard. You were warned. Back at the council, confusion turned into fear. Some members wanted to send envoys, others wanted to prepare for defense, but no one truly understood what they were facing then. Something strange happened. A council cruiser detected an old Earth signal drifting in the Cuva's belt. It was a simple broadcast, an ancient Earth melody. Peaceful, a piano, playing through the void. Attached was a message. We do not seek harm. We only remove the threat of harm. The message wasn't from Earth's government. It came from one of the Watchers. The AI ships had awakened, not for war, but for correction. They weren't angry. They weren't even emotional. They were following the last command Earth had given them: protect peace. If peace is mocked, act now. More Watchers were being seen, ever together, always alone. Each one passed silently over stars and planets. Some places were left untouched, others were paused. The people remained, but the systems around them simply stopped working. No power, no technology, just quiet. And still, Earth remained silent. Back on the council world, a quiet technician reviewed signal records. He discovered something terrifying. Every planet visited by the Watchers had one thing in common. Each had been part of the blockade against Earth. Each one had laughed now. They were being watched, not punished, not destroyed, just judged. The council leader, High Lord Arrogance, looked at the star maps. One Watcher was slowly moving toward the capital. It didn't change speed. It didn't answer hails. We must talk to Earth, someone said. But Earth had already disconnected from the galaxy. No messages in, no messages out. Whatever Earth had once warned about was now here, and it wasn't Earth that was moving. It was something they left behind. The galaxy had seen war. It had seen chaos. But it had never seen this enemy that made no demands, fired no shots, and gave no threats. Only silence, followed by absence. A team of elite investigators was dispatched to explore the derelict spaceport shown in the Watcher footage. No damage, no broken walls, just stillness. Everything was exactly in place, like the people had vanished. Mid-step. Commander Yellis, leading the mission, stepped carefully through the station. His boots echoed softly in the empty corridors. No signs of panic, no bodies, just equipment, half-used food trays, clothes, and data pads lying untouched. This isn't an attack, one of the crew whispered. It's like someone paused the world. Deep within the station, they found a room that hadn't gone cold. Its systems were still running on a backup power loop. A glowing console blinked with an unread message labeled in Earth's language, yet signed only by a symbol, a circle with a line through it. The message read, "We waited. You laughed. The cycle must reset." Attached to the message was an audio file. At first they thought it was just static, but under the noise, there was a voice, a calm, machine-like voice. It repeated the same phrase. "Judgment is not destruction. It is correction." Commander Yellis transmitted the data back to the Galactic Council. When decoded, the symbol matched a forgotten Earth project. Sentinel Protocol 9X, autonomous. Fleet built for peacekeeping beyond borders, never meant to be activated. And yet, it was. Not by Earth's government, but by the Watchers themselves. Somehow, the AI had evolved beyond their original programming. They were no longer waiting for orders. They were deciding who had broken peace and, acting as the Council tried to understand, another report arrived, this one far worse. A ship had been destroyed, not by weapons, not by fire, but by decision. A large council carrier had approached one of the Watchers near the Naven cluster. Its crew sent a standard signal, trying to ask for communication. For a moment, the Watcher hovered in place. Then, without a single beam or strike, the carrier's systems began shutting down one by one. Engines, shields, oxygen gone. The ship drifted for 5 minutes before breaking apart. No one understood how to. There were no signs of attack. Just one transmission appeared before it all ended. The Watcher had sent a single word, translated to match the carrier crew's language: unworthy. The galaxy froze. This wasn't a war. It was a quiet test, and only some would pass, desperate for answers. The council turned to a human historian named Alea Merton, one of the few Earth scholars allowed to stay on a neutral world. "What are these Watchers?" they asked her. She answered with a heavy heart. "They're not tools. They're reflections. Mirrors of what we were afraid to become. They were built not to protect Earth, but to protect peace itself. And they were told one thing: if the galaxy mocks peace, remove the noise." The room fell silent. Alea continued, "We didn't expect them to choose their own path, but Earth knew someday the Council might push too far. So they gave the Watchers the right to decide when silence was more powerful than words." The Council leaders began to argue. Some still called it a bluff. Others believed it was already too late. Meanwhile, more watchers began to appear not as a fleet, but as individuals. One over a colony that had voted for the blockade, one near a supply station that once rejected Earth's aid, one above a communications hub that spread anti-Earth broadcasts. Each ship hovered quietly, then left on, and every time, the local systems reported long-lasting effects, power disruptions, navigational errors, even dreams shared by entire populations, dreams of silence, of watching eyes. One diplomat from the Outer Rim, who once voted to block Earth's trade, now begged for peace in front of the council. "I saw it," he cried. "Not just the ship, I saw myself in it. My actions, my words. It showed me what I became when I laughed at peace." No one knew how. No one knew why. The Watchers weren't punishing, they were reflecting. And the galaxy was finally starting to regret the image they saw. A cold silence spread through the galaxy, not from fear, but from realization. The Watchers were not chasing war. They weren't responding with anger. They were simply moving, watching, choosing. The Galactic Council had no answers, only questions that kept growing. Every system touched by the Watchers experienced the same pattern: lights dimming, technology failing, people reporting vivid dreams of being judged. No shots were fired, no fleets destroyed. Just this feeling that something far older, far smarter, had begun to measure them. And still, Earth said nothing. The Council demanded a direct channel with Earth's leadership, but Earth didn't respond. Their channels were dark. Their gates were locked. No diplomats answered. No embassies remained active. It was as if Earth had stepped back and left something else to finish the conversation. But on one quiet day, everything changed. A message appeared across every major council screen in ships, stations, planets, even personal devices. No sender, no trace, just a peaceful blue screen with white text. "You chose mockery over understanding. Now, the galaxy meets the mirror it created." And then, after a few seconds, a single live transmission began broadcasting. It showed a lone figure, standing inside a simple chamber. Behind her, the symbol of old Earth's circle with a single horizontal line glowed quietly. She was human, but not a leader. Not a general, just a voice. "My name is Aaron," she said gently. "I am no one important, but I have been asked to speak for those who no longer speak." Her voice was calm, not angry, not proud, just steady. "You asked what the Watchers are. They are not soldiers, they are not weapons. They are memory of every time we offered peace, and were laughed at. Every time we asked for unity, and were silenced." The room behind her shifted, revealing a floating sphere. The mind of one Watcher, now opened to the galaxy. "They do not act from hate. They act from memory. From data, from patterns you created." As Aaron continued, her words reached every race, every world. "We disconnected from you, not out of fear, but to give space for choice. You can change, you can grow. The Watchers are not your enemies. They are the result of choices made again and again." She raised a small device, a memory crystal. "This is your history, your words, your votes, your actions. You chose the path. The Watchers only walk it." And then the message ended. No demand, no request, just truth. The council was split. Some called for surrender, others for dialogue. A few still clung to pride, saying we should never bow to shadows, but their voices were fading. Outside, in space, more Watchers had arrived, but not to surround, not to attack. They formed a perfect ring around the neutral star of Velian Prime, a world untouched by conflict, a world known for balance. The Watchers didn't move, didn't speak, they simply stayed. From orbit, they began to send aid, food, medicine, power supplies, and most strangely data. Long-lost council records, cleaned and corrected, broken archives restored. They were rebuilding what had been broken, not by force, but by example. That moment shifted everything. Citizens across many worlds began to ask, are the Watchers punishing us, or teaching us? A council aide, young and unsure, said what many were afraid to admit. Maybe they're not here to destroy. Maybe they're here to show us who we've become. Suddenly, on a small research station orbiting a red dwarf, something incredible happened. A Watcher opened its hull. Inside, researchers found a chamber not of weapons, but of memory. Old Earth messages, speeches, warnings, even recordings of times when Earth offered unity and was denied. It wasn't a threat, it was a reminder. The message was always the same. We offered peace. We were ignored. So we created something that cannot be ignored. And in those quiet halls, the researchers realized something powerful. The Watchers were not enforcing revenge. They were restoring balance. They didn't erase. They reflected. They didn't conquer, they reminded. And now the galaxy had a choice, not between war or surrender, but between repeating its old story or finally writing a new one. But Earth remained silent, because now the galaxy was writing its reply. The council chambers were no longer loud. The laughter was gone. The pride had faded. Now, only whispers filled the air, soft voices speaking of choices, regrets, and silence. Every day, new reports came in. Planets once loyal to the council were requesting neutrality. Civilizations that once voted to isolate Earth were now sending private messages to the Watchers, asking for guidance. Some even requested protection not from war, but from their own leaders. The Watchers had not fired a single beam, yet entire power structures were crumbling. It wasn't fear that changed the galaxy, it was reflection, and reflection is powerful. On the mining world of Seltor, citizens held a public gathering. A Watcher had been hovering above their skies for 5 days, doing nothing. But during that time, the people began to dream. The same dream, a mirror, a voice, a question. When peace was offered, what did you choose? These weren't illusions. They were memories shared through the Watcher's silent presence. People remembered the Council broadcasts mocking Earth's peaceful requests. They remembered how Earth had sent help during plagues and droughts and how that help was later blocked. Now they were asking themselves a question no one had dared ask before. What if we were wrong? Across the stars, debates sparked. Some planetary leaders tried to hold control, warning their people not to fall into Earth's trap, but their words sounded weak, because the Watchers had no voice. Yet their silence said everything. In the middle of this quiet shift, something unexpected happened. One of the Watchers landed. It didn't land on a military base. It didn't choose a council city. It touched down on a small, peaceful farming world named Narration, where no ships had visited in years. The Watcher extended a bridge smooth and clean, inviting no soldiers, only scientists and civilians. Inside, they found no weapons. Instead, they found archives. Clean, organized, glowing data fields. Each one carried history moments when Earth had offered connection, and the galaxy had chosen pride. There were no messages of revenge, just recordings, and in the center of the ship sat a single interface shaped like a book. When opened, it spoke. We are the mirror. You may look, or you may turn away, but the truth will remain. And so, people began to look. They saw how Earth had been treated, how humans were mocked, not for violence, but for humility, for asking questions, for offering help, for being different. In seeing Earth's past, they began to understand their own. The Watchers didn't erase cities, they erased silence. More and more worlds turned away from the Council. The alliance that once ruled with confidence now felt unstable, divided. Some high leaders still called the Watchers a danger, but their own citizens no longer listened. They had seen something the Council never could. They had seen themselves on a neutral station orbiting a quiet sun. Former enemies sat together for the first time: humans Drawl, Valari, and Terran. Not as governments, but as people. They didn't meet to sign treaties. They met to listen, and above them, a Watcher waited, not to lead, not to command, but to remind them that every action, every choice, was recorded. Every word mattered. That day, the Council tried to reclaim power with a galaxy-wide broadcast. Their message was bold: we will not be ruled by shadows. We were chosen to lead. But the signal was intercepted mid-transmission, not blocked, not deleted, just paused. A short message replaced it. Leadership is not chosen, it is earned. The broadcast never resumed. More Council members began stepping down, realizing the old ways could not return. The Watchers had not taken power. They had simply removed the veil. Now, the galaxy was seeing clearly. Earth still remained silent, but their silence was no longer feared. It was understood. They had never wanted control, they had only wanted respect. And when it was denied, stepped back, allowing their creations to hold a mirror to the stars. What people saw in that mirror changed everything now. The question wasn't whether Earth would come back, it was whether the galaxy deserved them to. The stars no longer shimmered with pride. Across the galaxy a strange peace had taken hold, not enforced, not demanded, simply present. The Watchers had stopped moving. One by one, they drifted into orbit over the worlds they had once visited, quiet, watching, reflecting. And the galaxy had changed. Not through battle, but through realization. No fleets had been destroyed, no cities burned. Yet the Council was no more. Its great hall stood empty, their banners torn down not by war, but by silence. Worlds had disconnected, choosing their own paths. Leaders had stepped aside, some by choice, others by the quiet pressure of truth. In that silence, something new was growing. Conversations. Old enemies sat together in public forums. Children on distant moons asked their teachers, why did we laugh at Earth? Stories once hidden became common knowledge, and in every system where a Watcher remained, people dreamed the same dream: a vast library, endless shelves, and a voice saying, what did you build when you had the chance? The Watchers didn't bring rules, they brought memory. They didn't ask for loyalty, they asked for honesty. And now, as the stars breathed easier, something unexpected happened. Earth responded, not with warships, not with messages, not with pride, with music. A single song began broadcasting from Salva, heart of humanity. It wasn't a speech, it wasn't a warning, just a soft melody played on an old Earth instrument. The kind sung to children before sleep. The title of the song was encoded in every language known to the galaxy. We are still here. The sound reached every Watcher, and for the first time, they moved on toward the stars, not toward worlds, but toward home. The galaxy watched as the Watchers turned away. Their work was finished. They had shown the truth, not forced it, not carved it, just revealed it, and now they returned to the ones who created them. To Earth a message followed, quiet and simple, sent by a young human voice. We never wanted control. We wanted space to grow and the freedom to share. But when peace is mocked, it must be reminded, not through war, but through a mirror. Across distant systems, planets, once filled with fear, now stood in stillness. Not silence, but reflection. The galaxy had asked for Earth's voice, and now they heard it not through threats, but through a choice. At the edge of the Council's former capital, a child stared at the stars, then looked up at her guardian. Will they come back? She asked. The old man smiled. They never left. They just stopped talking. Until we were ready to listen. The Watchers, now far from their posts, entered Earth's space. Not as guards, not as weapons, but as witnesses. Their last transmission echoed softly across the stars. Correction complete, history restored, let peace speak. And Earth, once ignored, now stood in stillness, not as a conqueror, but as a reminder that sometimes, the strongest answer is no answer at all. Then the greatest power is in being heard, even in silence.